we go in depth on this crisis in Iraq, we're very happy to be joined by Ari Rabin-Havt, a former advisor to Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. Ari, we thank you for your time. You were in the employ of Senator Reid. It was, what, a few years ago when he stepped to the microphones and said essentially the war in Iraq was lost. Was Harry Reid prescient? Was he clairvoyant? Was he telling it like it is? Your assessment of the current situation vis-a-vis the statement a few years ago by your former boss.
Sure. Look, I think at the time, America was feeling the pain of what was going on in Iraq. And the last thing we need now is to go send 24,000 people back. I mean, these are guys of my generation. I have friends who are over there. I have friends who were lost over there. And look, I was against this war from the start, but the biggest mistake we could make is sending our guys back into that war zone all over again.
And gentlemen, I want to take a quick step back here. And, you know, we know Dick Cheney doesn't want to talk about the years, but there are some sound bites that relate to the current situation we're in right now. And we want to get your opinion from both of you gentlemen on the other side of these sound bites. Let's go ahead and play those clips.
States like these and their terrorist allies constitute an axis of evil, arming to threaten the peace of the world. By seeking weapons of mass destruction, these regimes pose a grave and growing danger. They could provide these arms to terrorists, giving them the means to match their hatred. They could attack our allies or attempt to blackmail the United States. In any of these cases, the price of indifference would be catastrophic.
At this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
The main reason we went into Iraq at the time was we thought he had weapons of mass destruction. It turns out he didn't. What did Iraq have to do with what?
The attack on the World Trade Center.
Nothing.
The president's made clear what his objective is. It's victory in Iraq. And it's full speed ahead on that basis.
How do you explain the failure to anticipate more of these problems, the failure to prepare for them?
Well, George, I don't buy the analysis, basically. I think clearly there have been problems. There always are in any war.
Thank you all very much. Admiral Kelly, Captain Card, officers and sailors of the USS Abraham Lincoln, my fellow Americans. Major combat operations in Iraq have ended. In the Battle of Iraq, the United States and our allies have prevailed.
When you had a CIA director who said slam dunk.
No, he said slam dunk that the case, he didn't say slam dunk weapons. His point, just so you know, was that the case was a solid case. In other words, presenting the case would be a solid case to the people.
The final work of leaving Iraq has been done.
And so, gentlemen, there we hear more sound bites from President Bush, but one from President Obama there. You know, a lot has been made. You know, things are being said from folks like Dick Cheney. All right, we'll get to J.D.'s take on this. But shouldn't we be talking about the last 10 years or so to get perspective on where we are now, or things have changed that much that we should be looking more ahead? All right, go ahead.
Look, I think we need to remember our past. I remember a clip of Dick Cheney back from 1994 where he was saying it would have been a mistake to go into Iraq. And he basically, this is from the American Enterprise Institute in 1994, where he predicts what's going on now and said this will be the result if we go into Iraq. Well, I wish Dick Cheney in 2004 listened to Dick Cheney in 1994.
And by the same token, Ari, perhaps you didn't offer this, and I don't have the exact take on what Senator Reid had to say, but the criticism of the first Gulf War was encapsulated in a quick turnaround history proffered by U.S. News and World Report, which they entitled Triumph Without Victory. So there was criticism, oftentimes driven by political parties, of the first conflict in Iraq not taking out Saddam Hussein and being a 100-hour war at the behest of the United Nations. You may not have shared that, but this is the point I'll make, and then we've got a comment from General Hayden I'd like to get your reaction to. To hear both commanders-in-chief, both former President Bush and current President Obama, offer their situation. Bush from, I believe memory serves, the USS Lincoln, that combat operations were over in Iraq, and then President Obama saying, hey, the situation is done. Nothing occurs in a vacuum. I fault the administration with whom I served, the Bush administration, when I was serving in Congress, for not completely utilizing our war-making abilities to take care of the conflict even more quickly. And on the other hand, I believe a failure to get a status of forces agreement, whatever the difficulty, by pulling everyone out, has led to the problems we have now. I don't agree with Dick Cheney. I don't want to see 20,000 more in there. But suffice it to say that in any look at history, nothing occurs in a vacuum, and there are many hands on this particular operation.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. Nothing does occur in a vacuum. The actions of the Bush administration come into play, and yes, the actions of the Obama administration come into play here. I would suggest that what's going on now is slightly inevitable, that once we got involved there, when you're dealing with an insurgency, there's no amount of troops that can come up against it. But yeah, you have to look at the Bush administration that got us in, and you have to look at the Obama administration that got us out. And it's a fair criticism that getting out caused this mess. Now, I would say I didn't want to be there. It was obvious this mess was going to occur, and I was fine with getting out. But you at least have to, if you're going to take my position, you at least have to accept that this was an inevitable result.
Well, in terms of what has happened in the here and now, let's go back. As I promised, General Michael Hayden joined us earlier today, offered this assessment of the current situation and the American relationship with al-Maliki. Let's listen to General Hayden, then we'll get your response.
Off the new Iraqi government far too early. President Bush used to huddle with him about every 2 weeks on a video conference, doing a lot of coaching and mentoring. That stopped when President Obama came in. He didn't want to do that. And then in 2011, when we went to zero as the number of American troops there, every faction in Iraq went to their corner and figured with the Americans gone, I have to think with the worst of all the other factions, and, well, now we see what happened.
So that is the situation, according to General Hayden. Ari, we'll get your comments in a second, but we've been joined now by Michael Reagan. Michael, I don't know if you were able to hear what General Michael Hayden had to say, but as you take a look at what is going on in Iraq today, do you agree with Hayden's assessment in terms of status of forces and perhaps not getting the Iraqis up to speed?
I mean, when I look at this, I really think, what was the exit strategy? Was the exit strategy for everything to go back the way it was before we went in there, you know, the first or the second time? And, you know, I wrote an op-ed piece last week. You might have read it. You know, I feel for the Gold Star mothers. I feel for the parents who have lost children in Fallujah, where an al-Qaeda flag is flying over that town. I feel for, you know, for all those who lost limbs, who lost their lives there. Was this the end result? If this was going to be the end result, what the hell did we go in there for? And what was Obama thinking when he pulled everybody out and, like he said, everybody went to their corners? Did they not expect everybody to go to their corners, the Kurds, the Sunnis, the Shias, ISIS, everybody else, and come out swinging at a later date and know that there was nobody there to stop them? And now we're going to send 300 people there to do what?
And that's a great question, Mike, and a lot of folks are asking that question. I also want to get your take real quickly. We played the soundbite earlier from Dick Cheney and what he had to say about this. I want to recount the past 10 or 12 years of what happened there, but another aspect of this is what Dick Cheney wrote in that op-ed piece, saying in reference to President Obama that rarely has a U.S. president been so wrong about so much at the expense of so many. You know, Michael, when you hear that from Dick Cheney, and he maybe unintentionally invoked your father's name in this argument, what's your reaction to what Dick Cheney's saying now?
Well, you know, it's interesting because, you know, in all honesty, it was laughable when Bush went on the USS Abraham Lincoln and said, this whole thing's over, we won, everybody can go home. That was just idiotic. And I think everybody knows that. Both sides have made mistakes. Everybody's to blame here. If somebody would have come to us conservatives, J.D. and others, and said, listen, the end result's going to be, we're going to walk away and leave a void, and, you know, evil's going to take their hold again, I don't think conservatives would have supported this war. We would have looked at more like what my father did with Libya, middle of the night, sending planes in, taking out a couple of palaces, and keeping Libya basically down, hunkered down for 20 years. We worry too much these days about what the United Nations is going to say about us and what we're going to do. The truth is, the United Nations is never going to leave New York. They're never going to leave the United States of America. They're just not going to do that. And so we have to quit worrying about what other people are going to think like the United Nations and maybe think about how Ronald Reagan actually did it without firing a shot, ending the Cold War, without really firing a shot, keeping Gaddafi down, and playing from a position of strength instead of a position of weakness, which we seem to be in right now.
Ari, you've been waiting patiently to give us your version of events. React to what Michael Reagan has just said. We have less than a minute left.
Well, I think he was absolutely right. I would just make one tweak to it. He said, what the hell were we doing there in the first place? And that's exactly right. This was the inevitable conclusion. This is what, frankly, people like me were saying in 2003, 2004, that how long are we going to be there? And you know who else was right? John McCain was actually right when he said, I want to be there for 100 years. I just don't think the American people want that. We don't want our guys in a situation where they're getting blown up with IEDs for 100 years, and that's the problem. If we were going to leave, this was going to happen, and at a certain point, we have to leave.
All right, that's something that John McCain said on the campaign trail, and apparently the voters didn't like what he had to say about that. Now we're kind of in this position, 100 years or where we are now.
Well, Ari Rabin-Havt, we appreciate your perspective. Michael Reagan, we're going to invite you to hang around. There's more straight ahead here on America's Forum as we talk foreign policy.